everyone, James Labrie from Dream Theater, and you're listening to or watching the podcast Talking Into Infinity with JT and Brian. Enjoy this. These guys are extremely informative. I love their dialogue. I love their interpretation of the songs, who and what we are, what we were going after. They're very accurate in their interpretations and descriptions, and I just think this is a great show, and these guys are doing a stand-up stellar job. So once again, enjoy Talking Into Infinity with JT and Brian.
What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Talking Into Infinity, a Dream Theater-centric podcast. I'm your host, John. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, talkingintoinfinity.com, the CMSnetwork.com, also the CMS Rumble page and CMS TV. We are live at those locations every other Thursday at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. If you have not done so already, please remember to click the like button, click the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, all on YouTube, of course, so that you are notified every time we go live. Without further ado, the dynamic duo back together again. Mr. Brian Hendrickson, how's it going, man? Good to see you.
I'm back.
Dude, you know what's weird? This is sorry to cut you up, but you know what's really weird? Our last show, you weren't on, so I haven't done a show with you. And I wasn't able to show up for my last Nerf Herder Council show last week, so it's going to be like a month between when AJ and I did a show.
Nice.
And so I mean, it's like I can't wait to get back in just like a normal schedule of things, you know. But life intervenes, as they say.
Yeah, you know, like Seinfeld, the summer of George. This is the summer of Brain, or is it Brian? I don't know. How do I spell it? Is it IA?
Who knows with you, man?
Yeah, man. I was like, I was down in the foothills of Tennessee. That's how you got to say it if you're from down there. Tennessee. Yeah, dude. I mean, you talk about some deliverance type moments that happened. I got to still show you these pictures of the car, basically a car graveyard inside of basically the front yard of a trailer that people were actually living at. And this entire property is basically a car graveyard with there was even like a school bus, like the shattered remains of a school bus, you know, not to Christmas Story, but yeah. I don't know if I have a picture of the school bus, dude, but this was like, you're into horror movies, like that movie U-Turn or Wrong Turn, I think it's called.
Yeah,
It's like it's right out of that, man. I mean, it was. I had my video camera going for a while, just as we're kind of just slowly, and all of a sudden these dogs start barking like crazy. I'm like, this is the kind of thing they might be looking out the windows trying to shoot or something.
You're gonna be in your own live action.
Yeah, I mean, dude, these roads, man. I mean, I thought, because we've done Hawaii, the road to Hana, which is like the most ridiculous winding road along the ocean ever, and these roads, I mean, it has nothing on these, man. I mean, you can barely pass anybody. You know, it's barely enough room for one car half the time, and these guys are right on your tail if you're not from there. It was a scary moment driving home. I think it was the last night we were there. I'm like,
so were you in the mountains or?
Yeah, Smoky Mountains, Gatlinburg, Smoky Mountain National Park. We went there twice to do some hiking. So beautiful area. I definitely want to go back.
Dude, getting up some of those mountains are the most terrifying drive that I've ever experienced. I mean, my sister-in-law, I mean, she's getting divorced from this guy here soon, if not, you know, sooner rather than later. But they got married up there. It was like, you know, a few months before Steph and I did. And so we went out there for this, and, you know, Steph's mom rented one of those huge cabins, and like 14 or 16 of us stayed in this thing. Well, anyway, their wedding ceremony was on top of this mountain. And to get up there, we go up this road that just winds around the damn mountain. And I'm like, there is no room for another car. Yeah. So if someone's coming down, and I'm of course on the outside, you know, outside seat in the back, and I'm like, if this thing goes over, I have nowhere to go. Like, at least the people on the left can hopefully jump out of their doors and land somewhere. I'm just going down. And so I was like shitting a brick the whole way up this goddamn mountain. And sure enough, we're almost to the top and a car comes. I'm like, oh God. And both of us slow down, and our mirrors are like a millimeter apart. And
Right.
I'm just looking over, and I can't see road. All I can see is down. And I don't like heights to begin with. And I'm like, so this is how it ends. This is how it ends. I'm gonna tumble down the side of a Smoky Mountain, or whatever the hell it is, in Gatlinburg, Tennessee, and I'm gonna die. And so on the way back, I was like, all right, I'm taking my same seat, because then I knew I'd be on the inside of the mountain. So if anything happened, my fat ass was jumping out of that car so fast, it was like I'd be shot out of a cannon.
There was definitely parts where there was no way a second car. So we did one of those kind of, you find it on VRBO, those cabins, you just rent
Verbo,
one.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they're rented. There's a million companies out there, and dude, it's like every half mile there's a new one being built too, which is even crazier, But so ours was part of some company owned, like, this whole section. They all have different names: Smoky Mountain Lodge, whatever.
Yeah.
So we get the first day there was hilarious because we're literally trying to check into the wrong cabin, which I don't know. Here's the thing, dude. It was the same number. It's just a different street, but you can't tell from street signs. And Jill's like, I have a picture of it, and it doesn't look right. Well, the best part about it was we're getting there, and like one of the maintenance guys like, I might come back and weed eat later if that's okay. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. Like he was almost expecting us to arrive like right at that time. And we're looking at this thing, and it's a ginormous. I'm like, this seems way too big. And she's like, it's not matching the picture. And they send you a code. We're punching in this code. The code's not working. We're yelling at each other. Like, well, you don't have the right code. Well, you're punching it in wrong. You know how it is. It's typical spousal fight, right? So finally, we like look on our GPS, because that's the funny thing is your GPS works the entire time through those mountains. I don't know how it does. Whereas over here in Chardon, dude, I get the slightest bit off the weirdest path, and it's nothing. So I don't know if they just put 5 million towers out there because they know there's 5 million tourists or whatever. But anyway, so we finally figured out we're literally in the wrong house. So we go back down, and we have to go back up. So, we're just winding around, going back up. And then the last like half mile is just like what you're describing. There isn't really room for two cars. So I'm like, well, at night you could at least see the lights coming around. So you'd have enough time to back up. During the day, you wouldn't have a prayer. I mean, you'd have no idea unless you're going 2 miles an hour with your windows open and you can hear. But anyway, so we got up there. But then the best part is we're like way up there looking down at the one we thought we were in. And then here's another, like you can see my hand, like literally 90 degree. Here's another hill going up to like 25 more cabins.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you're thinking like, how does a truck get up there to like deliver furniture or do construction or fix the plumb? You know what I mean? You're just like, how does like a big truck that needs to get up there? Like, it doesn't seem remotely possible.
Yeah, and they just cram those things in, I mean, and we'll get to our topic here in a second, because I know we've been rambling a little bit, but yeah, dude, I mean, they've been cramming those things in, like you said, and I mean, it's just crazy. And I had the same thought you did. Like, how in the hell do they get like materials up here for this stuff? Like, I mean, it's kind of creepy. I mean, beautiful area, but
I wish I'd got in on it, because it's a gold mine for what, I mean, those cabins, ours was like 400. I mean, it was worth every penny, but it's like, I mean, it's just a gold mine.
Yeah. So. And I don't know about you, but ours, like I say, I mean, ours had like a finished, like 6-car garage right next to the main house. So you could have slept like 20, 24 people in this thing. And in between them was this giant covered hot tub that fit like 12 people. And I don't know about you, but I one of the most relaxing times I can ever remember was sitting in this hot tub facing out towards the valley, and you're just sitting there looking at that scenery and this beautiful green valley and mountains, and you're just sipping on a drink in the hot tub. You're like, oh my God, kill me now. So
yeah, the views are spectacular. I mean, I think I posted a couple of the views just from our balcony, and they're just like, I mean, I definitely would want to go back and hit plenty of other hiking trails.
Yeah, for sure. Discuss Metal Joe, our good buddy Joseph Friend, great to see you. He says, I've heard horror stories about that mountain switchback driving. Yeah. He says, turn up the Van Halen so they can hear you coming and brace for impact. I think, Joe, that they should turn up either suspended animation or terminal velocity, personally. Chastity Crawley, our very good friend, good to see you. She says, I'm here for John and John, JP Music, and JT Grandbaby update. So the update is, we are officially 8 days away from the scheduled due date. and no baby yet. But we are officially on baby watch. Dude, anytime my wife's phone rings, I'm just like jumping. Like, is that Drew? That's my stepdaughter. And Drew called the other night for nothing. I got all excited, and Steph's like, "Oh, I don't know if it's here or not. I think you might have left it someplace else." And I couldn't help myself. I hollered. I was like, "Don't call unless it's about the baby." So
I'm still trying to picture calling you, like just the idea that you're going to be a grandpa. And I know none of us are young anymore, but that's just like blows my mind. Just because you're you more than anything.
I know. I figured that'll make me the cool grandpa, and plus I'm being called Nano, so that's Italian for grandpa. So that's I'll be Nano and Steph is Nana.
Okay.
So at least it's not like Grandpa John, like so.
Grandfather
anyway.
Jonathan.
I will do that at some point, believe me. All right, so let's get into tonight's topic, man. This is going to be fun. Like I posted in the show description, like we've done album cage matches, between different bands. We've done obviously a lot of cage matches between Dream Theater records, but we have never done a cage match between one member facing off against himself. So this is going to be fun, man. So I'm excited. I know that before we get into it, you wanted to talk a little bit about each album, give a little background, and then we'll get into our cage match here.
Yeah, just real quick before you started this exercise we were going to do, did you have a rough idea of how old the newest album was?
Oh God, it was 22, wasn't it?
5 years ago, 2020.
Oh my God, is it that long already?
That seemed possible.
Dude, I remember where I was listening to it for the first time. And it's funny because like I was still at the same job I'm at, but our building moved late last year, and we're right by the metro parks. Which for those of you guys who aren't from the Cleveland area, we have this massive park system, and you drive through. It's just beautiful. Anyway, well, the new building is right by the park, and I actually take that as an alternate route home because it's much prettier. It adds like 3 minutes onto my drive. It's much better. Well, anyway, when I listen to records, I drive through the metro parks because it's a very soothing, kind of calming place. And so when this came out from our other building, which is about 7 minutes from this one, I actually went the long way and went through the parkway. And it's now my current drive home. I still remember listening to it going, oh my God, I can't wait to get home and call Jonah and Brian. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, 5 years. God damn.
So that makes the first one 20 years because it was a 15-year break between solo albums, which is kind of insane. But something else I didn't realize about the first album, and you probably already knew this, but did you know who was responsible for mixing the first album?
I actually do not know that.
Mr. Kevin Shirley.
Oh, no kidding.
I guess was involved with a little album that I don't think any of us have ever heard before called Falling into Infinity.
I don't know if anybody knows that one.
Yeah.
Keep the well-known ones.
Yeah, he mixed it. Kevin Shirley, I didn't realize how much he was involved with their career. Maybe you did, but So Liquid Tension Experiment, he did that. A couple of the live albums, Once in a Lifetime, Metropolis 2, Live Scenes. Train of Thought he mixed. Chaos in Motion, other live stuff. But yeah, man. And then also, so on bass we had Dave LaRue, right? Kind of a lone session guy, but also played with Flying Colors.
Yep.
On basically everything they ever did, and on Jordan Rudess. I don't know if this was his first album, Rhythm of Time. But yeah, man. I mean, just some very interesting stuff there. And of course, the big name on the very last album was Andy Sneap. And man, you can tell and we'll get into when we start talking about it, but the production, man, I mean, I've heard been, as you know, big fan of Satriani, obviously Tony McAlpine, Steve Vai, I like, but not quite as much, but they have great albums, great songs, but they have never had the production to get a guitar and the drum sound to just completely scream off the album like it does on this Terminal Velocity.
Yeah.
And that's all, as we know, 99%, I guess, due to Andy Sneap.
Yeah. I could be wrong. I could be wrong on this, but I think that this was the first thing they recorded at DTHQ. I think this was I don't know that for sure. For some reason, I feel like I read that somewhere, so don't quote me on it. But I think I read it somewhere. We need there we go. See, now's where we need Cale. We need Cale to tell it if Terminal Velocity was the first record recorded at DTHQ. I thought I read that somewhere,
which would be comical because Portnoy was not part of TT.
Yeah,
at that time, right? Which is that's a weird conflict.
Yeah. So interesting stuff. But yeah, I mean, just dude, both records are just full of heavy hitters, and I have a lot of thoughts on that. I have a lot of thoughts on the feel, resulting feel. I will say that I mean, just the quality of both records is. Cale says he believes it was. So all right, so Cale's always great for that crazy trivia. So, Chastity's good for the crazy Harry Potter trivia. So,
what about to be a fly on the wall when Mike Mangini finds out the first thing recorded at TTHQ is gonna be with Mike Portnoy?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously he's kind of part of the band, but knows the legacy. I don't know. That's a little weird. We can talk about that later, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that does bear discussion a little bit later. You know what I mean? Like, because I think, and we'll get to this, but there's a certain feel to the second record that I think was very familiar. And I know for a fact that my very first impression of Terminal Velocity was, okay, that's Portnoy and Petrucci. That chemistry was absolutely undeniable. And so that was, one of the reasons I enjoyed it so much, outside of the fact that, again, it's an excellent record and both records are great. So this for me was a tough one. And I think that there's a couple songs that if they were in different spots on the record, like if they had faced off against a different song, the result might have been different. So that's kind of interesting to me. Yeah. Look at this. Look at Cale McLeish. Wait, Portnoy recorded here? Should I be worried? Nah, fam, you're fine. One touring cycle later. Bye, Mike. Mike's back. I knew it. Oh, that's awesome. Chastity, you're too sweet. She says, John, until JP or JM have grandkids, you'll be one of the coolest grandpas named John. That's nice. Awesome. I appreciate it. But yeah, and I just think these records are just, I mean, they're great. And it was such a difficult decision. I will say, quick note, and then we'll get into it. We are not including Snake in My Boot because for a cage match, we have to have an equivalent number of songs. So we chose the shortest song on Terminal Velocity because it had one more track. So we did leave off Snake in My Boot. And as I texted you earlier, I don't know how you feel about that song, but it was my least favorite from Terminal Velocity. So it was interesting that that's the one that we did not include in this.
Not my least favorite, but I want to real quick on Cale's point, just to go home one more time with this. So remember when he was recording it and going to tour with Mike and all the questions, and John's like, oh no, it's it's not a big deal, it doesn't feel weird or strange at all. And it's like, well, of course, because you're already in Dream Theater, John Petrucci, you're not going anywhere.
Yeah,
of course it doesn't feel weird at all for you because no matter what the hell happens, you're still in the band.
Yep. And I just thought it was hilarious that like every single interview around that damn record, every person ad nauseum would have a Portnoy. Is he coming back? Like, is this a
right?
And it's like, man, like, first of all, after the first few times it's asked, let it go.
Right.
Second of all, he's not going to come out and, when he's doing press for his solo record, go, oh yeah, Portnoy's back in the band. That's a little bit bigger of an announcement than to do it then. Right. Just kind of slide it in an interview casually. Oh, actually, yeah. But so when we recorded, The Oddfather, we had these time signatures. Like, I mean, it's not going to happen. So, like, why are you asking that? Like, you would know, and if he is coming back, you'll know. He's not going to say it now. So it seemed like such a waste of time question to me.
Yeah.
So, all right. So I have a few notes on this, and I don't know if you have a few notes, but I'll do that, and then we'll get into the track versus track. But first and foremost for me on this one, I tried like hell to remove the whole Portnoy and Petrucci are back together, feeling for this, because like I said, that was my very first emotional reaction to the first couple songs. I was like, oh my God, that sounds like, and it's, you have that kind of excitement, like, oh, the guys are back together. So I tried to remove that because it makes it a little more exciting emotionally, I think, to remember that. And as I've said on the show many times, I get very visceral reactions to records and to music, and I always remember that sort of thing. So I wanted to kind of remove that. I think that in general, I think Terminal Velocity is closer to a Dream Theater record than Suspended Animation is. And as I said, this was a close vote for me on a lot, because a lot of these songs could have a different vote depending on my mood. I mean, some of them were that close. I was like, yeah, I picked this one, but then, in a couple weeks, if I'm feeling different, I might choose the other one. And my last note is, both of these albums really make me realize that, Kevin Moore and Derek Sherinian worked well with John Petrucci and really had a more similar melodic style, I think, because if you notice, and we've talked about this on the show, the first 3 records with Kevin Moore have that major scale feel and sound to them. They're like up, they're a little more happy is not the right word, but you know what I'm saying. And Falling Into Infinity kind of has a little of that too. And the records didn't start getting that dark kind of more minor key stuff till Jordan came in. And on both of these records, I think you hear more of that classic pre-Jordan Rudess era melodic structuring. And so to me, I was like, all right. So I think Jordan brings out a little of that darkness in John Petrucci. So those are my impressions. Like, what are your impressions generally? And then we'll get into the track by track.
That's a great point, man. I never thought of that, and I kind of almost forgot we had spoken about that. But yeah, there's definitely moments of major. There's more minor in there than I think that I agree with what your statement is. But as we get into it more, maybe we'll discuss, and I could be wrong on that. My biggest difference between the two, and just forget that the guy's name is Mike Portnoy and that he played with Petrucci, right? You kind of have to put that aside a second.
Yeah.
But it's just crystal clear. The first album, and most of these guitar shredder, where there's no vocals, pure instrumental type albums are like this. It's a ridiculous guitar player, and that's kind of a well-known session drummer, but who's just sort of the passenger, right? He's just there. Or maybe he's sort of driving, but it's just like it's kind of a straight line. He's not going to go off too much, but more so the passenger, right? Hey, I'm just along for the ride. And I wrote down a couple of the names of the drummers. I could throw them up here real quick on the first one, but let's see. I'll get to it. Hang on, I have it right here in my notes. I don't know if anyone's ever even heard of these two guys, but Dave DeCenzo, Tony Vinderosa. So I'm sure if we look them up, we'll find out they're, like I said, they're not bad drummers. Who's good, Petrucci's not going to go get one, but the difference is like the writing style is just completely 100% all the way the other way. I mean, there's obvious tones here where Portnoy is driving this thing. He's doing his own creating. He's adding tons and tons of just killer. It's not always just changing up the time signature. I mean, there's a lot of little cool fills and just things that we've come to know that Portnoy loves to do to color up a song. And those just are not there on the first album. No one can convince me of that. And I don't think anyone, and even if you didn't know who Mike Portnoy was, like I said, a regular person listening to this too could be like, oh wow, the drums have a whole different role, so to speak, on Terminal Velocity.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that. And yet I don't think it takes away from Suspended Animation. I think they're both excellent in their own right.
No, it doesn't. It has to be. It has to be that way on the first one. It has to be.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. That's a good point. All right, so starting off with track 1. Again, guys, if you're just tuning in, we are skipping "Snake in My Boot" because it was the shortest song on Terminal Velocity, and we had to remove one track, so there was 8 songs versus 8 songs. So when we say track 8 at the end, we know it's actually track 8 versus track 9, but you get where we're going. All right, so the first pair of songs is Jaws of Life and Terminal Velocity. For me, this was a tough call right off the bat. They both definitely smack you in the head right out of the gate. Tonally they're different, but I think, and that's for the whole record, really. But I think it all depends on what you like in terms of preference. I think Suspended Animation is a little more raw, a little more gritty. Terminal Velocity is cleaner with less, I would say, sharp edges to the tones, I think is how I'd phrase it. But yeah, I love how Jaws of Life starts out just heavy as balls. That one is a little more straightforward than Terminal Velocity. Terminal Velocity has a kind of a happier vibe to it, which is cool to me. It's definitely got that kind of hell yeah, we're back kind of feels to it. And I also think that Terminal Velocity has a little more energy to it. So for me, again, this was a tough one. I chose Terminal Velocity. So that is that's my preference. This was a very close one, but I think there's just a little bit more to Terminal Velocity that I like. So that was my choice. So talk about your thoughts between these two and which one you picked.
So yeah, Jaws of Life, man, haunting evil riff. I mean, it's one of those that there's a few on here as we go through that I think would just feel at home on any DT album, to be honest. But the riff sort of goes someplace I don't really expect it to go, man. There's that real high melodic theme it's really hard to what are we going to call these, verse chorus, versus like the A section, the B section. So I guess we'll kind of stick with verse chorus, but I'm still kind of lost on what is the verse and what is the chorus on some of these, and then what is like the opening riff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about. There's that real high melodic theme he does. That's just such a great killer counterpoint to those chunky, heavy guitar stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a cool bass line moving around on what I call the chorus, and it gives the song a little bit of a new direction, aside from the kind of the heavy way it starts out. It's when you get that sort of stuff, I think it lets the guitar breathe a little bit more too, and we have some of that bass stuff going on. Terminal Velocity, this is what, if you listen to a lot of the interviews, Petrucci talked about, like, can a guitar drive, I'm going to use the term pop, it doesn't really apply, but a pop rock instrumental song, if it assumes like a lot of the responsibility of the vocal lines, per se. But there's a great change up here in style. We get to the second verse. Again, we're mixing styles here. Various segments, what do we want to call these? Verses, choruses, I don't know. But I'm already saying the exact same thing here, because this was from my note. But you notice the drumming is night and day right away.
Yeah,
Portnoy's adding so much to the musicality, bringing these songs to a totally different direction. My notes are here. I had the first two guys are great, more than capable. But session player feel, Portnoy jumps in, and he's driving this train, and he's not just hanging on to the back of Petrucci's coattails. And I'm with you. I got to go Terminal Velocity for the win on this one.
Awesome. Yeah, again, I took out the emotion of the whole, this is the first time we've heard Portnoy and Petrucci really just themselves, kind of getting into that chemistry. I mean, they did obviously LTE3 and stuff like that. And, but I think, this was kind of, one of those situations where when you found out that Portnoy was back on drums doing this, you're like, oh my God. And they were touring, you're like, holy shit, we get to see that again. So, but yeah, I completely agree with you that he brings a different element to it. And it's almost like, and it's chemistry driven. Obviously he's much more comfortable back there, but he's so used to playing with John that he knows he can kind of, stretch out and do different things. Whereas these other guys may be like, well, I can play that way too, but I don't want to step on his toes because it's his record, it's John Petrucci's record. And so I'm not going to try and be like a Mike Portnoy-ish, clone-ish guy, on Suspended Animation. He's like, because we need to just let the guitar do the work. So I think that's a very astute point on your point. So, all right. So the second batch of songs that we are comparing is Glasgow Kiss and The Oddfather. What are your thoughts on those two, and which one do you have winning?
Okay, so I need you to resolve an argument. Is Glasgow Kiss the happy song for Suspended Animation, or is happy Happy Song the Glasgow Kiss for Terminal Velocity?
It's yeah. I mean, you got to go with Happy Song being Glasgow Kiss. Because I
Okay.
mean, Glasgow Kiss came first. You know,
I know, but
Glasgow
it's
Kiss is like the Petrucci quote unquote hit
it
and
it it
when he
it
plays live and
is.
stuff.
It
So
is. Okay, well, obviously the difference is you don't have the pop punk sensibilities on this one. But you still got the soaring major key, feel good riffs. I get shades of AC/DC used to play these guitars kind of like their bagpipes, but more in a minor key. But the way he does it, there's this real royal, I call it a regal kind of a bagpipe mimicking style on some of these riffs,
yeah,
real baroque. Like you said, it's his most well-known solo tune. There's a lot of parts of Satriani, Tony McAlpine. I hear some Eric Johnson in there, but dude, this is 99% of this is completely influenced by Bach. This is resolving everything out of these major keys and continuing to build on these main circular themes that we love. JP takes all of this stuff to the hilt, elevates it. It's kind of like something you'd hear playing as the knights are being announced and ready to joust. You know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
but then there's that cool, super cool, mellow, clean breakdown, right? Just past about the halfway mark, and
yeah,
some nice little just little hints of tasty supporting bass riffs, and you got to have those little kind of things in that on an instrumental album. Otherwise, it just sounds like one big mush of guitar, right? You need these
yeah.
sort of dynamics. But then there's small swells, those volume swells in the clean part.
Mhm.
And I'm hearing some Count of Tuscany in there. I really am. Hints of what's to come, right?
Yep.
Oddfather, you're Italian, so Godfather, is that one of the top 5 movies of all time, 1 and 2?
I mean, how could they not be? I mean,
Okay, yeah.
I have my own personal favorites, but if someone said, "Okay, the top movies ever, top
Yeah.
5, like the first 2 Godfathers are in there," I'd be like, "You're not going to get an argument from me."
Yeah, I think so too. Amazing, but yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a nod to the Godfather, the way it's. But what's super cool though is that really fast picking he does to simulate almost like a violin on steroids. He
Yeah.
does it about 2 or 3 times. But this was the thing I remember most about when we went and saw the show at House of Blues. Man, when he's like, okay, this one's called The Oddfather, and you and I were super hyped because we liked the song. But man, I mean, the hair on the back of my neck at one point just started standing up because this song, I mean, on record is great, but live, I don't know, they just took it to a whole nother, like, you felt like you were floating or something. I just had never seen 3 or 4 guys on stage do what they were doing. Like, I just never seen anything like that for my entire life. And to hear it come out like that and just constantly building and building and building and never getting boring and still being creative on this same kind of a theme, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I mean, this is one super hard because it's so easy for me to pick The Oddfather, but I think I am going to actually go ahead and pick Glasgow Kiss. And I will say Oddfather is the most ridiculous song on Terminal Velocity for my money.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm
it's
still going to say Glasgow Kiss.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, I don't think you can go wrong with any of these choices. I mean, maybe with one that I'll talk about a little bit later, but yeah, for me, again, I mean, this was a tough call. As I mentioned, Glasgow Kiss is kind of like, the hit for JP and his solo career. I think there's a little more meat on the prog bone, as it were, with the Oddfather, but the melodies for Glasgow Kiss are just undeniable, and they're just so damn big. And I think what's cool about Glasgow Kiss is like right at the moment where it could fall into you going, that's getting repetitious. That melodic middle part hits, and it just takes that left turn, and you're like, ooh, all right. So I think that's just great. I mean, obviously Oddfather is heavier. It's got more balls to it. It's without going into like being like, Train of Thought heavy or, Parasomnia or whatever, of course. I think the leads on the Oddfather stand out a little more technically, in a technical sense, I should say, than the ones on Glasgow Kiss do. And again, this is one of those things kind of like, you mentioned before, like with the drumming kind of taking it in a different direction. I think, again, because this one's a little more prog-y, it gives you a different vibe. And God, again, this was such a close vote for me. I actually went with The Oddfather, and it was super, super close. So, so far for me, it's no votes for Suspended Animation and 2 votes for Terminal Velocity, and you're at 1 apiece. So, going into our third pair of songs, we have Tunnel Vision versus Happy Song. And Tunnel Vision kind of reminds me of a more upbeat version of The Oddfather in a way. And the opening riff is just fat, dude. I mean, that is a big, thunderous, like just chunking ass riff, which is great. I like how often the drums in this song kind of give off a vibe that almost keep you on your toes. You know, it's almost like that, like instead of like it's you know, it's it's kind of like that on the and type of feel, which is really cool. You know, the fact that it doesn't just hear to snare, kick, snare, snare, kick, you know, or I'm sorry, kick, snare, kick, snare, like the whole time, like even it gives it a little bit of a cool flair, I think. You know, the juxtaposition of simple solos over some really complex rhythms is also a cool change, because you know the rhythms are kind of like, you know, going all over the place, but then the solos are kind of simplistic here and there. So I like that. I I wonder, like I have this in my notes. This is, was Happy Song written while Petrucci was thinking, you know, we should get Mike Portnoy back in Dream Theater? Like, it's like, you know, you kind of like picture him like cheesing the whole time. He's like writing the song and playing it and stuff. You know, Happy Song just moves you like physically and emotionally. It's just up the whole time. You know, you could, you know, bang your head to it and you're just like, yeah, like this is great. Like, you know, it's there's nothing dark and heavy about it. It's just a great you know, poppy rock, just shred fest, which is cool. Man, I wanted to pick Tunnel Vision on this one, and then the Happy Song just got me grooving, dude. But in the end, I had to go with Tunnel Vision. But this is one of those ones, like I mentioned earlier, depending on my mood, I could easily flip flop to Happy Song. I mean, if I was doing this in a few weeks and depending on where I was at, I might listen to Happy Song instead and go, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to take that over Tunnel Vision. So another unbelievably close vote for me. But yeah, I'm going with Tunnel Vision on this one. So we're now 1 vote for Suspended Animation for me and 2 for Terminal Velocity. So what are your thoughts on Tunnel Vision versus Happy Song?
Man, why did these two have to go against each other?
Right?
Once again, you know, the massive Phrygian mode, you know, the Middle Eastern theme, heavy riff start this one. So annoyed that it's going against Happy Song, but man, there's those, again, we get kind of those soaring swells that ring out over the killer riffs. It gives you that juxtaposition. You know, the main motif is cool because it's got he's able to use the wah pedal to carry that riff, which is pretty sweet.
Yep.
I don't know if you call it irony, but towards I think it's the last third here, there is a little bit of happy major key for just a few brief moments.
Yep.
I love the end of this. There's the echoey pedal kind of riffing, mixing it, tapping, and there's, you know, and then there's the crushing heavy riff again at the end. But Happy Song, man, there's few songs that the second it comes on, I'm just literally bouncing off the walls, man. This is just one of those. You know, it sounds pop punk, of course. That's what it's supposed to, minus the vocals. But man, it's done so damn well, and those ridiculous arpeggios, like the juxtaposition of putting those in a pop song, right? It's just insane arpeggios, and still stay basically poppy and musical. You know, to coming up with the main theme, and then there's that little trill at 131 that, you know, and I think I've mentioned AC/DC, but really the king of doing that was Tom Schultz from Boston. You know, they put those trills in all those Boston songs. It's just all the perfect moments to just, you know, just sort of like give you a little bit of suspension there, and you know, the smallest little tidbit, and it makes the song even, I don't know, what's the word, happier, right?
Yeah, probably.
I mean, you know, and he goes into his bag of tricks where, you know, you take the theme that you're doing and you go an octave higher, then you go 2 octave higher, and then you double it, and then you put a harmony on the same theme, you know, and it's just like a clinic in how to write something extremely musical that puts people, like you said, in an upbeat, bouncy mood. But what always floored me about the song, and I always forget it. This is not a 3-minute song; it's 6 minutes.
Yeah,
It's the fastest 6 minutes of any song I've ever heard in my entire life, because it feels like you just turn it on and it's over.
yeah.
So all that being said, one last little tidbit I had here regarding Happy Song. This actually was played before. So some of the tracks, Happy Song, are new versions of songs Petrucci used to play with when he was doing the G3.
Okay, awesome.
Which I did not know. Yeah, and there's 2 other songs. When we get to them, I will mention that are also not totally new, but little factoid there. Yeah, dude, I got to go Happy Song on this one all the way.
Oh wow, okay. So you're at what's your score? So you're at 2 for.
I got 2 for the new one and 1 for the old one.
So we're tied right now.
Okay.
So 1 and 2. Okay, interesting. All right. By the way, Cale McLeish is going to work. He really needs to change his work schedule to accommodate our podcast. His choices are Jaws of Life, Glasgow Kiss, Happy Song, Wishful Thinking, Damage Control, Glassy Eyed Zombies, Lost Without You, and Temple of Circadia. Going to work. Enjoy. Cale, thanks for tuning in, man. Always great to talk to you. Hard to argue with any of those. Like I say, this is probably the most difficult cage match we might ever do. So, all right. So getting into our 4th match of the evening here, we have Wishful Thinking versus Gemini. Go.
Oh crap! I'm up.
Well, you said you're doing the even numbers, man. So.
Yeah, no.
Are you aware that 4 is an even number?
Let's see. 2, 4. What's after 4? 6. Yeah, man. I mean, we kind of mellow out here, right?
Right.
Here we call this a ballad. It's what it's cerebral and contemplative. Yet there's a lullaby quality to this one, you know? I mean,
In a way, yeah.
Yeah. I don't mean that in it puts me to sleep. It's just a vibe I get. It feels like it was written from the perspective, maybe contemplating kids, family, life in general. I don't know. I'm always a fan of the major key stuff because, we don't get much of that. But this goes back to proving your point that, hey, they are kind of going back. He's going back to that style he had with the first couple keyboard players. The clean lines that are picked out behind the wailing, almost crying melody on top, those are super neat, man.
Yeah.
And then there's that little bit of an ascension there. We get that. What's that I hear? Oh, it sounds a little bit like Hollow Years. I'm getting sorry, not Hollow. I'm getting a little bit of a Hollow Years vibe. I don't know if you got that too. There's that one part where I can almost see him start to almost sing that.
Yep.
And the last 2 minutes, it's like almost like a mini march. Like, where did this come from, man? This turns into like 4 different songs, but it still all kind of works. Got a little bit of restrained jazzy blues fusions, and then it's like, oh, hey, the last 60 seconds, we're just going to go completely shred. I know how the song started, but that's not how we're going to end. And honestly, that's what a great instrumental album, it's particularly, is going to be built on kind of those type of foundations, right? So,
yeah.
So that's what I have for Wishful Thinking. Gemini, this one sort of just bashes you over the head immediately. There's a lot of big accents from Portnoy, right? It's kind of a full throttle locomotive. There's a little bit of you get that hint of Flight of the Bumblebee on that one riff where the solo goes off. I call it a sad and greasy riff. I don't know if
it's sad and greasy.
Yeah, I know Lake's going to come on here and go, I looked that up on a thesaurus, but I actually know those words on my own. But yeah, there's like a desperation. It's a frantic theme going on here. I don't know. Then out of nowhere, here comes the Spanish guitar. What the hell's this? What's this doing here, right? I didn't see that coming 10 miles away. Full beast mode jam at the end. And there's a couple songs here. The way they end is the very beginning of In the Presence of Enemies Part 1. I don't know if you noticed that.
Yeah, there's a lot of callbacks. I think you're hitting some nails quite on the head.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's done on purpose or it's like they couldn't help themselves, but this one stuck out. Like I was like, whoa, and then I think 2 songs later I heard it again. So then I'm like, wait a minute. But yeah, this one's kind of tough. I sort of like the crazy all over the place. What happens on Wishful Thinking? Where we start here, we go here in the middle, and then we end different. So I am going to lean this. This is pretty close. These are two really, really different songs. It's tough to sort of compare these, right? I'll take Wishful Thinking.
Okay. All right. For me, this was actually one of the easier choices of our competition here. Wishful Thinking, I love that build to the octave part, how it, like, starting off from the beginning, it kind of like builds into that, like I said, that octave part, and then it goes back to the mellow part, but it's up another octave. Like, it's just, I love how that works. For me, I kind of see this song a little differently than you did, or here, I should say, probably. To me, it kind of stays in that plaintive up-tempo ballad feel, kind of for most of the song until those last 2 minutes. And I like that you brought that up, because that's what I thought too. There's that again, thesaurus words, the bendy chordal solo part, like, like, I mean, that just, man, it makes you do the rock face. You're like, so if you're air guitar, you're doing the rock face when you're, listening to that. So, I mean, it's a great song. It's a great song. Obviously Gemini is for sure, the more proggy of the two songs, which I think you can say that about, I would say probably most of Terminal Velocity. But the first 2 minutes of that song just kick ass. I mean, it's heavy, it's atmospheric, it's proggy, it's it's kind of like, what I think the standard Dream Theater fan would come to a John Petrucci solo record expecting to hear. And from there, the shredding just continues. And then, I completely agree with you. I love that crazy Spanish thing that they get into. I mean, that's just weird and quirky, and you know how I am about parts like that in Dream Theater stuff. And so I love that. And Gemini definitely rips some chords directly off of Awake. I definitely heard some chords where I was like, ooh, so it's and you've mentioned a couple other things, that you kind of could hear, like, oh, that's Hollow Years, or In the Presence. It's kind of cool to hear those throwbacks, isn't it? Because it's like, kind of like that little, it's like, yeah, your old friend, like, it's pretty cool. So, that being said, like I said, this is one of the easier choices for me. I actually went with Gemini. So I know it's hard to compare, but and a few when I went through this one twice, and it just, because it was really close for me, but then on a second listen, taking my notes, I was like, Gemini just is the one that just really stands out for me. So, so I got Gemini. So for me, it's what do we have now? I need to keep better track of my scores here. I have 3 for Terminal Velocity and 1 for Suspended Animation. And you're what, 2 and 2, I think? Yeah, 2 and 2. So, all right, little there. Mount Hood 91, thanks for tuning in, man. He says, I know we're talking JP, but y'all hear the latest Kiko Loureiro? One of the best guitar instrumental solo albums ever. Dude's insane. I have heard it, and you are not wrong. It is a kick-ass record, man. Oh, man. So good. He also says, the birth of that song is like right around Awake when he was doing clinics. I don't know if y'all said that already. No, we did not. But yeah, that's a very, very good point, man. Very good point. Chastity Crawley says, air guitar headbanging, rocking out at a stoplight, confusing the hell out of the people in the cars next to you. Yep. That's about it, Chaz. Oh my God. All right. So moving on to our 5th match of the evening here. We have Damage Control versus Out of the Blue. For me, I really love like that cool rock style riff that opens Damage Control. I like the change. It goes into that kind of hopeful sounding part. I would phrase it as around the 2.5 minute mark. The boogie part is the third change, and it's just, that is so cool. Especially the little bass solo, and then you've got the unison guitar bass part that follows it. I really like that. I just think Damage Control has a great flow to it. It's got several changes to keep it interesting. A couple of cool like mood or feel changes. I don't know how you want to phrase them. Out of the Blue is slow jazzy blues, it gets going. And I'm not the biggest fan of those sorts of things. They get really draggy to me. I mean, but obviously, Petrucci does a great job of it. But it also has a really cool build to it. And the musicianship adds something interesting to a simple format, I think. Like I said, that style is not my favorite by any means. But I think there's enough going on to where it doesn't sound like a prog band playing that style. It just sounds like really good musicians adding something extra to something that's usually very simplistic. And the one thing I will say, Out of the Blue might have the most feel of any of the solos on that on the Terminal Velocity record, at least for me. And the one thing I love is, right around the 4-minute mark when Portnoy and Petrucci actually switched to that 4/4. So it's like a straight ahead beat instead of like the swing. That's just such a cool little thing to throw in there to really kind of break it up. In the end, I kind of feel like if Out of the Blue had gone against some other tunes on Suspended Animation, it would have won, but it didn't. So for me, this is Damage Control. So I'm going with Damage Control from Suspended Animation. Where do you stand on Damage Control versus Out of the Blue?
This to me was the toughest one because I think these are two of the weaker songs.
Okay.
And I don't know, man. Damage Control, it just starts out with, as Lars loved to call it, a stock riff, right? For lack of a better word. I don't know. It has that feel of, we're writing an instrumental album. I have this riff. We need a couple more songs. I don't know. It just feels like it's just kind of thrown together.
Okay.
On the fly. I don't think there's enough to that riff to stretch it out as long as they did. So you found more musicality in it than I did. And I think it hurts because from what we've heard up to this point is so darn good that like, okay, this is sort of sticks out like a sore thumb to me. And a little bit in a way. And I don't mind the I kind of like the tone, that squawky sound they have on the main theme that goes on this one. That's kind of cool. But otherwise it feels a little forced, and let's try to milk something out of this where I don't know that there's much left in the cow on that one, but
that's a great term.
But yeah, I mean, when it comes to the Blues, they're seriously my favorite hockey team that I've ever rooted for. I mean, I'm from St. Louis, but man, do you remember this? And if Aiken's on, he knows, he'll attest to this. That every 80s rocker was supposedly, I'm so influenced and so into the Blues.
Yeah.
Then they get up on stage and they try to throw it into some kind of solo or do a solo with it. And it's just, I don't know, it comes off ridiculous to me.
Ham-fisted. Yeah.
Yeah. Ham-fisted. Great word.
Yeah.
If there's ever anything ham-fisted, it's just the two of us on this podcast, right?
We're changing the name of the show. The show is now called Ham-Fisted.
Yeah, there you go.
A music podcast.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, I'm totally opposite with you on this. I don't like this song. I mean, it just seems like I really want to play the blues. I got the blues. I'm going to try to play the blues. And I know that he's an extremely sincere guy, and I'm not knocking anything as his technical or his creative ability, but I don't know. To me, this is, again, we've had all these home runs that come to this point, and then it's like, I think I want to get a blues song on this album. And he can play all the notes, he knows all the modes, the tricks, and the soundscapes, but I don't know. I guess the one thing, maybe it breaks up the album a little bit if you want, a respite from kind of what's been going on earlier. But for me, it just sort of, I don't know. Like, to me, the best time I've ever heard blues is if it's like I purposely go to a jazz or blues club and there's a bunch of cats up there just jamming it, And you know what the absolute worst is, right? When you go to a jam night and some guy gets up there and tries to bust out, I don't know. I'll say Mustang Sally. I know that's not blues, but just something along those lines, or ZZ Top, and just sound horrible on it. And so yeah. That being said, man, this is tough. I'm actually probably gonna lean. I would go back and listen to Damage Control, but probably before I would Out of the Blue. So I'll take Damage Control on this one.
Okay. All right. So we agreed on that one. Awesome. All right. All right. So ironically, like I thought we'd be a little closer in opinion on some of these, and we're not. So that's kind of cool. All right. So you're leading this one off, since obviously we established earlier you're not familiar with even numbers. So the sixth batch of songs, we have Curve versus Glassy Eyed Zombies. What do you got?
Yeah. So for me, the first true all guitar album that I absolutely fell in love with was Joe Satriani, Surfing with the Alien. And if this thing is not a full on, is it homage or homage? Homage, however you want to say the word. Homage.
God, dude.
I mean, if this isn't like just I mean, it's almost a carbon copy all the way down to the wah sound that drives the main riff. I mean, the production, it's straight is, and that's totally fine, man. I love, whereas I kind of wasn't a fan of, I don't want to say emulating the blues, but what was going on there. I love this sort of nod to Satriani, but man, I mean, it's about as straight as head, rocker as he's ever going to probably get. I'm not mad about it. I call this a groove rocker. I think sometimes he even has to talk himself into holding back a little bit, and that's not a bad thing.
Yeah.
But there's that crazy, busy, accented middle section. Again, this one, to kind of milk the riff over and over again, maybe just a tad too long, but this one has such an influence and a callback to Surfing with the Alien that I love it. Glassy Eyed Zombies was another one of the tunes I brought up here. What was my note again? I think it's just the same thing. It was one of two songs that was played. Newer versions of songs that he played when he did the G3 thing. So, I mean, is this straight out of the? Speaking of John's, like, this is the best song that John 5 wish he wrote, right?
I mean,
just from
way to phrase it,
just from the song title alone, right? I mean, he's probably saw that and was like, "Son of a bitch! I wish I thought of that." Right?
Yeah, right.
I mean, just a big fat wandering riff. It's like I put down. I'm actually gonna give myself a pat on the back here on this one. I think it's pretty good. How about Space Age Goth Funk? What do you think about that? But
wow,
yeah,
okay.
man. I mean, I love the. You're a fan of guitar playing. You know all the terms, probably the stuff more than I do. The terms, but the great pick scrapes, man. Muted picking, the harmonics.
Yeah,
it's great, cool harmonic finishes. It's super raw, and it doesn't feel thought out. It feels like, it's naturally just going to go to this. Picks up the pace halfway through, go double time. You almost feel like you're chasing a villain in a video game or something, right? I mean,
yeah.
And then again, he does the. I'll take the theme. I'm going to go a couple octaves higher. Just keeps building on that main riff, and he's just a master at that. And I'd be curious to know how this song sounds on, because I've never really seen any of the G3 stuff. I think you have. How this song changed from what it started out when he started playing it there to what it is now. It'd be interesting. But yeah, all day on this one, it's got to be Glassy Eyed Zombies.
Okay. Yeah, God, at this point, now that you're saying that Terminal Velocity is 5 years old, and that would be the G3 I saw with Phil Collin and John Petrucci and Satriani was longer than that. So he might have thrown this in there for all I know. I don't remember, but I mean, that was just notes all night long. So it's like,
right.
So, but yeah. So for me, with Curve, I love the straight up rock vibe that it has. The unison part between the bass and Petrucci around the 3.5 minute mark is just kick ass, dude. Just kind of mid-scale, rhythm playing, kind of moving around. It's not going too crazy low or high. It's just something cool about it. You know what I mean? And I really like that. Curve is kind of a one-trick pony to me in a way, but for some reason it really works. Like I don't want anything like ungodly, weird, proggy all the time. But I also, if I'm listening to John Petrucci, I also would like a little bit, I'd like some complexity to it. And I think that Curve doesn't really do that too much. But for some reason, again, like I said, it just works for me. So I think it's an incredibly strong song for that reason. Glassy Eyed Zombies for me is one of those wonky tunes that I've said many, many times. It's it's just I love it. It's just great. Such a weird, cool feel. Around the 3 minute 15 second mark, you get that that Portnoy drum beat that we're all familiar with that kind of signals. Oh boy, here it comes, here it comes, here it comes.
Yep.
And then nothing happens. And you're like, what the hell? And then all of a sudden it does. It's like being on a roller coaster. You get to the top and you're like, here we go. And it stops. You're like, God damn it. What the hell? Oh, we're going down the hill. Like, so, it goes from that, like that wonk to straight metal. You know what I mean? It's just so cool. And the last 2 minutes of the song absolutely just rip. So for me, this was one of the most difficult choices that I had. But that having been said, I actually went with Glassy Eyed Zombies as well. So, yeah, just both are just great songs though for me. So I really, really like them both. Moving on to our seventh and second to last pair of songs that we are battling here. We have Lost Without You and The Way Things Fall. And I had to listen to this pairing a lot to really kind of determine who would win this one. Lost Without You is kind of like, that one is almost like out of the blue for me. I think it's, Lost Without You is kind of, Suspended Animation's version of Out of the Blue. I really love the change to the major scale stuff after that brooding, jazzy type of intro. I really like that change. And then, kind of in like the last third of the song, around there, it kind of goes into a combination of the two styles, which I think is really, really cool. The way that he blended the two is really sweet. I thought that was very, very cool. I think, Lost Without You is somewhat more, somewhat more concise and to the point. Again, a somewhat more concise and to the point version of Out of the Blue, while being, more interesting to the ear as well. The Way Things Fall, it has such a cool upbeat vibe to it and everything. And it just makes you bob your head and you're like, yeah, like I didn't have many more notes on that song because it's kind of more straightforward. And it just kind of was like, yeah, it's there. And I think, again, this one, I went back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And this is really the pairing that I definitely, like, day by day could change my mind. And this, when I finally settled on it this morning, I chose The Way Things Fall. So that's my choice. Where do you stand on these two?
Yeah, I put a bluesy dirge intro for Lost Without You. Yeah, because JP's got to get his blues fix in. I won't say again because this is before the other album, right?
Yeah,
I feel like it's just. I just don't think these guys can help it. They have to figure out a way to do it on every album somehow, to some degree, right? I don't mind some of the clean, broken lines to support the main riff. I'm not a huge fan of. But like, I think you actually point out the best part of this song is kind of when it climbs about that halfway part. There's that other main theme, and the soloing and some of the choices on that. It's about a full minute 15 seconds, I think. And the other cool little bit on this is the Dave LaRue's a little bit of a bass solo here. It's nothing super fancy and nothing, but it breaks up the song, I think, a decent amount. Way Things Fall, man, I get a hint of Rush Spirit of Radio meets Journey Only the Young when this song starts. And then that riff is like Doc in TNT, almost the Jakey Lee stuff off Ultimate Sin, right? That just the real kind of quick riff there. It's just a chugging thing before it goes into that other ridiculous stuff. But man, I get transported back to the summer of 1987 at the beginning of this one. But what the only hilarious part of this is, I'm pretty damn sure, and the only reason I know this is because we have Prime, and the other day I was just messing around trying to find something stupid to watch. So they have the original Beverly Hills 90210.
Oh God!
And I think I know where I'm going with this. I mean, the main riff and theme in this song it's not that far off of the guitar part that's for Beverly Hills 90210 theme song. I mean,
I have to tell you, man, I don't know that theme song. I never watched a single episode of that show.
well, if you go back and hear it now, you're going to be like, holy crap. It doesn't take that much to go to it. Now, obviously, I'm not remotely saying he listened to that or was influenced by that, but it's just a weird element to this. But yeah, man, on the midway, we've got the double time. There's great elements of I love when he gets the dual guitar harmony stuff going. I know it's probably only really one guitar and he's doing them both, but it's two guitars, but he's playing both parts.
No, he's playing it at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's Petrucci, man. You never know. But
two notes at the same time would be called, as you would phrase it, a chord.
Yeah, exactly. How do you play all those chords with just one guitar, right? But yeah, it's kind of the cool. There's a cool, heavy, sort of chunky breakdown in this one too. There's a little bit darker tone, but it's a little, but it's mostly upbeat.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm going to send you the Beverly Hills 90210 when we're done here, and you can listen to that one.
That is officially 107 plus episodes in. We have officially had our first Beverly Hills 90210 reference.
Yeah, we have. And really, honestly, I don't know if there's a worse TV show ever made. There probably is, but man, this maybe it gets a little better. But man, the first episode, I mean, it's just fall on the floor laughing hilariously bad.
The cheese, yep.
So, but anyway, I mean, I remember sort of watching a little bit, back in the day, only because there were some hot chicks on there. That was the only reason.
That's the only reason.
Yeah, to watch something like that. But yeah, I mean, once again, I'm not a fan of the bluesy kind of thing. This to me is super easy. I Lost Without You. I don't know if I'd ever really go back and listen to that one. Or it's The Way Things Fall. A lot of cool elements in there, and I really like that song. So I'll go The Way Things Fall.
So is Lost Without You the one that you said that you just really absolutely do not like?
Yeah, that probably would be it. Yeah, I don't know. I would have. I mean, if you put that song on, I would literally have no. If you didn't tell me ahead of time, I would have no idea whatsoever that that's Petrucci.
Wow, interesting.
Just none. And I'm not like. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. I don't know. It just seems. Again, I don't want to say stock or trying to be a blues guy, but like I said, these guys have to get their blues fix in. It's just something within them. They got to do it. So that's fine. It's his album.
Yeah. Well, I think with him having a song like that is breaking up the metallic aspects of things. It's like, let's throw this other stuff in there. Otherwise, it is just an album of, one trick pony wankery in a way. I mean, and I love listening to some, guitar instrumental albums, but some of them I just can't get into because it's kind of like punk music to me. It's like once you've heard, you're like, oh, the album starts out great, and after 3 songs, you're like, all right, I'm listening to something else. So I think for that reason, it's like you said, earlier about Out of the Blue, kind of like it's in there to break things up, this, that, and the other. So,
yeah, I totally, I get that aspect.
Yeah. Chastity Crawley. She's spot on as usual. She says, this is the episode of Brian using amazing adjectives to accurately describe amazing songs. I second that. Brian's in rare form tonight.
Well, every once in a while I get a good episode. This is why I need to stay away as much as I can, so the good ones stick out more.
Right. Need to go to them Smoky Mountains and everything.
That's right.
So, all right. Well, you're up for the last pairing. Again, guys, we are skipping Snake in the Boot because we removed it. It is the shortest song on Terminal Velocity. So for that reason, we eliminated that from our cage match because there are only 8 songs on Suspended Animation. So the final pairing is Animate, Inanimate versus Temple of Circadia. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Animate, Inanimate, man. I get a bit of Prince in this riff.
By the way, I think it's Animate, Inanimate. I think I mispronounced that because I'm a goddamn fool. But anyway, correcting myself. There we go. Yeah.
Animate, Inanimate. Yeah, you're right. That's probably is right.
I'm an idiot. Never mind.
Temple of Sir Canada. He's like the king. He's the king up north, Sir Canada. Y'all playing Temple of Sir Canada?
For some reason, Sir Canada brings to mind like somebody like one of the main characters of Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Sir Canada.
Sir Lancelot, Sir Galahad, and Sir Canada.
Sir Canada.
He was the guy that was he was the guy whose scenes all ended up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah. Hey, how come we never put any of Sir Canada stuff in there? Okay, at least we're making ourselves laugh on this one. Yeah. So okay, so right. Animate, Inanimate. Yeah, I feel a little Prince in this riff, man. The very beginning of it, but then we go back to the pedaling and the Phrygian mode is what you like. There's a little bit of old Rush in the middle here. I think of the second side of 2112. There's some of that stuff. I get what I call a 70s space rock breakdown, I guess. This is some 70s rock feel on this one. We go back into the main riff. Only one the thing on this one, I start to really get that I get that Tool riff stuck in my head, and I feel that's just like takes over. kind of how it does on Home sometimes. And so I don't know, for the last 2-3 minutes of this, I just keep hearing that Tool riff, and it ruins it a little bit for me. As much as I like the riff, it just feels kind of like they're running out of energy on that one. Temple of go ahead.
Circana. No, I was gonna say Tool can ruin anything, so I don't blame you there.
Well, that's not the way I'm making my point, but that's okay. The Temple of Sir Canada. Dude, this feels like it could have been on any Dream Theater album. Especially something like Black Clouds and maybe Systematic Chaos. Feels like it fits right in that era.
Yeah.
Chugging syncopated riffs. Once again, this is the thing we love about the stuff with the choir voice string keyboard over top the heavy riffs. We always love that recipe. I didn't count. Is there 7 time signature changes in the first 2.5 minutes of the song?
Oh God, yeah, I know, dude.
Something like that.
It's out there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but once again, 3 minutes in, there's a really cool mellow breakdown, and some of those volume swell riffs that we like. Goes back more to the classical Baroque kind of feel on some of this. And but my favorite part on this, man, once again, I think we've established it's not John Petrucci playing both guitars at the same time, but those harmony guitars, man, sitting on top of each other over that really cool groove they have, and the notes just sort of sing on top of it just effortlessly before it goes into that just solo that I don't know how you can end an album better than the soaring solo at the end of this song.
Yeah.
This was probably one of my favorites. I think they played this at the concert, if I remember correctly. But yeah, man, I'll take Temple of Sir Canada. I'll take
Temple of Sir Canada. Nice. Yeah. So, yeah, animate, inanimate is, it's a beast. It does start out with that. I always call it like the Egyptian motif, the Phrygian. It's funny you said, that I like. Now, I don't like that. I don't like that Egyptian sound. That is something that I've just for some reason never been into. I think, this one, it takes a little bit long to get into its first change. I had mentioned about one of the songs earlier saying, right as I think it was Glasgow Kiss, right as it's about to get into the point where you kind of go, this is, kind of about to get repetitious. It changes. You're like, okay, cool. I think this song does take a little long to get into its first change. You're like kind of like waiting for it, and it kind of takes a minute. Around the 7-minute mark, it gets into that up tempo part, which is just kick ass. It is just one of my favorite parts of that whole record, actually. All in all, though, I think Animate Inanimate is one of those songs that could have some fat trimmed off of it to be more of a length like the other songs around it, and it would have been great. I just think that it's, kind of like one of those, as we always talk about, those like, 10, 11, 12-minute songs. Some of them feel like it's that long, and some of them just feel like they're like half that length. And I think this one kind of feels like it's that length, unfortunately. Still a great song, but I think it could have been trimmed a little. With Temple of Sir Canada, I think, it starts out and you're just like, fuck yeah, dude. And, you mentioned a few Dream Theater songs. It could sound like, I definitely think that this is the song that sounds like it could have morphed right into a Dream Theater song with very little effort. I think if John Petrucci would have brought this to Dream Theater and James would have said, well, let's lengthen this so I could sing over it. Let's lengthen that so I could sing over it. Like this, here'll be the chorus. Like I think you'd have a Dream Theater song, lickety split. So, you know what? I think that's our first lickety split on the show in 107 plus episodes too. We had our first Beverly Hills 90210 reference, and we had our first lickety split. Yeah. Ham-fisted lickety split in Beverly Hills 90210. We're blazing new trails on Talking Into Infinity. but yeah, so Temple of Circadia's first change comes in around 2 minutes and 45 seconds or so. Whereas, Animate Inanimate it's closer to, if not more than, around 5 minutes. And, Temple of Circadia is more stark, so it's a little more interesting. So it gets more to the point and is a little wilder, more wild listen. After the change, it doesn't go right back into the original motif, whereas animate, just seems to kind of ride that one feel for the majority of its runtime. Temple of Circadia is always throwing you a curveball and stuff. For me, this was the easiest choice of all of them for me. And we would be completely remiss if we did not mention the absolutely kick-ass video that our buddy Wayne Joyner did for this song. He did all the stuff on it, obviously, but I mean his animated video for this is great. He's got so many Easter eggs in there. It's just so cool. He's such a oh my god. But yeah, so this was the easiest choice of all for me. This is definitely Temple of Circadia. So at the end, for me, that again, several of these could flip-flop. So this is a lot closer than the score would indicate. But for me, for the purposes of this discussion, I have Terminal Velocity winning 6-2. What was your final score?
I thought you were keeping track for me.
I was not.
Oh, okay. Okay, let's see. I have.
How do you not highlight these things?
Well, you said you were keeping track over there.
Well, look, man. I already had to keep track of what are even numbers for you.
Yeah, which I thought I was supposed to be doing number 9, so I'm not doing the evens now.
It's such an ass.
All right, hold on. Let me just figure out the math here real quick.
I mean, okay. This shouldn't be too difficult, man.
Terminal velocity.
So I got 0 and 1. Okay. You pick Glasgow Kiss. So
just count the terminal velocity ones. Terminal velocity, happy song.
2. Okay.
No, yeah, not there. Glassy-eyed zombies.
3.
The way things fall.
4.
And Temple of Circadia.
5. Okay, so all right. So terminal velocity wins for both of us. For me, it's 6-2. For you, it's 5-3. And it's odd. I kind of feel like your choices were a little easier. So I think yours would probably stay at a 5-3, whereas mine could really get closer to like a 4-4, if not, like a tie, if not a 5-3 win for suspended animation. So I kind of feel like that's how things fell for me. Yeah, I mean, looking back on it, it almost feels like, I don't know how you see this, but it almost feels like John Petrucci really kind of graduated with terminal velocity. Like he kind of stepped it up a level, which is, a lot of times with these guys that do these sorts of records, I don't think you see that. It's kind of like, at least the ones I listen to, they all kind of blend together, which is fine. You get what you get. If you're at McDonald's, you want a cheeseburger, so you get a cheeseburger. But I really think that like terminal velocity really ups the game. It's a little more proggy. I think it's, the changes are a little more stark. And as you said, I mean, the drumming definitely stands out, which I think seems like an obvious thing to say because it's Mike Portnoy. But again, I think, because he has that comfort level and the session guys are like, well, I don't want to step on his toes. Like, I think that's the difference there. But yeah, I think terminal velocity, I know for me, when it was announced, I was like, oh, this is going to be kick ass. Another, solo, especially the fact that he was touring on it was like, oh, this is going to be cool. What a great show to go to. And man, when I first heard it, dude, it was everything I had hoped and then some. I mean, there's an energy to it. And again, I purposely pulled this out of my rankings so that I would make it a little more even. But dude, there is no denying that there is a feel here that these guys had a fucking boner to play together again like this. I mean, it is everywhere on this record. And you can just hear their chemistry is just, and you know this as a musician, and we may have talked about this about my bands and stuff, but dude, you know this. There are certain musicians that you just click with. And when you get in a room with them, you can just write, and it just feels good and it comes out good, and you just are just completely in sync with each other. And it's so clear that John Petrucci and Mike Portnoy have that. It just is on full display on this record. So I don't know if you agree with that or.
Yeah, I do. One thing I want to point out too, man. I think the first 3 songs out the gate on both of these albums are just like I could just flip a coin. I love them. I love them all.
Yeah.
There's a bit of maybe a small lull, but Terminal Velocity, maybe for like a song or two, but then it just picks up and I love pretty much everything at the end there. But yeah, there's I'm trying to think of what the right word here is, but I think there's just the whole reason they brought Portnoy back was okay, maybe to sell tickets. You can say that if you want, but to bring that sort of energy back to the band. They know, like Mancini's a great player. He's a great writer. He can, it's great. Everything he does is great on drums, right? But he doesn't have that thing that Mike Portnoy has, that energy that when he steps into a room, Mike Portnoy's here.
Yeah.
Mangini steps into a room, you go, oh man, that's a great drummer. But there is a presence about Mike Portnoy that nobody can deny, right? That's just, he just has the ability to take something over, but he's able to sort of insert himself into this without going too over the top, like you said, and be way more of, I think, a creative process than if Petrucci said, okay, well, I wrote this album, I need a drummer, you just come in and just play it, the way I want you to or whatever. And just sort of play an album with some hired hands where they're supposed to play it out, like you said, with your buddies. This is two best friends, no matter what the hell happened with, before, the 10-year hiatus or whatever it was, however long he's gone. I can't keep track anymore. 15, 14, what was it? How many years?
2010 to 23, 13 years. Yeah.
Okay, 13 years, right? So, but they're still best friends, and that shows on the album. And let's just call a spade, man. I mean, this was what set everything back in motion. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah. Well, but I was going to say, I mean, to your point, I think that's clear, because he does have that presence, Portnoy. And I think the tour just cemented it, because I mean, when they did this, there is that certain energy and that certain chemistry and for John Petrucci to feel that, especially after having dealt with what they were coming off of Black Cloud, or not Black Clouds, Distance Over Time, excuse me, which was a great record and it was very well received by the fans. But prior to that, they had been through The Astonishing and stuff like that, and some fan interest had waned, as we know, unfortunately. I don't agree with those fans, as I've said. I'd like to repeat that, but so I think getting back in the room with Portnoy and doing this again really was kind of like that's that is kind of what it feels like. And then I think what cemented it was going out on tour and having him back behind him in a live environment. And I know you and I said, and you can go back and listen to our episode that we did after we saw the Petrucci solo show, you and I both said that, like, as much as like Dave LaRue is just amazing, like we might have looked at him twice all night. And even though it was John Petrucci's show, like we ended up watching Portnoy kind of more than him. And we were both like, God damn, he's like a front man, but he's behind the drums. And I just think that getting that writing chemistry back on the record and then feeling that energy of how they interact on stage, I think I completely agree with you. And I don't think anybody would disagree with this. And they kind of have said this themselves. That's where they went, all right, I think we need to kind of make this happen. Which is kind of interesting because, they still did View from the Top of the World after that.
Yeah.
And so, I kind of wonder if that just like really was the nail in the coffin where, Petrucci was kind of like, look, man, like telling the guys, like, this is the energy we need. Like you said, like, let's reinfuse the band. Let's re-energize the band. Let's get something fresh. And that freshness is bringing back the guy that they have all the chemistry with.
Well, what floored me too is, and I don't know how you thought about this at the time, but when I heard he was recording the album, doing the album and everything, I did not think in a million years he was be the person playing drums when they toured. I just didn't see it.
Really?
Maybe I was blind, but I don't know. I guess I bought into the, oh, well, this is nothing, just an old buddy, just, it's a comfortable pair of shoes, he's really wanted to write together again. And so I guess I kind of bought into that thinking, okay, well, he just was just going to do the album and that was going to be it. And I really did not think he was going to tour with them. I don't know why, but maybe I'm in the minority of people that thought that, but I just didn't see it.
I'm going to have to say, I think you are, because dude, as soon as he said, okay, well, Portnoy's the drummer on the record, and then he announced, oh, I'm going to tour it. I was like, all right, Portnoy's going on tour with him. I mean, he has to, because could you imagine the fan riot? Like, what a dick tease. Like, oh, Portnoy's on my record. All right, live, I have insert awesome. Like, I have Kenny
he kept basically sort of downplaying it to, he was. It was weird. There was sort of like a juxtaposition, like super excited about it, man. It was so great, but this doesn't mean anything. He was still kind of sort of saying this doesn't mean anything, right?
No,
he was doing that.
No, there was, but even if he was or he wasn't, there was no way that he could bring Portnoy back as a partner and not take him on tour.
Well,
I agree. Imagine the
that.
Backlash. I mean, just you and I are cool with both lineups, and we would have accepted fine. But even you and I would have gone, "What the fuck, really?" Like,
yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to say that now, but I still think at the time, again, the message that he was putting across. You can go back and watch the interviews.
Well, but don't forget. By the way, real quick, Ricardo Lopez checking in. Thanks for checking out the show, man. Great to see you. He says, I don't know if you noticed, but even DTHQ is initiated by Portnoy on drums. If I'm not wrong, Terminal Velocity was the first album recorded in DTHQ. We actually brought that up very early in the show, but I did have to clarify that because I wasn't 100% sure. But we did get that verified. So yeah, it's kind of interesting how that works out, right, Ricardo? That's a very odd coincidence, but
well, that goes into exactly what we're talking about now, right? It was all right there in front of us from the beginning. And I guess I was too blind to see it, right?
Well, and that's what I was going to say is, I mean, that's why he was downplaying those sorts of things in the interviews, because I mean, let's think about it. I mean, dude, it's so obvious, and we knew it back then. This is not anything we're like some revelation in hindsight. Like as soon as Doug McCauley's checking in, man. Says, what's up? A little late, had a family thing. Good to see you. Great to see you too, man. Good discussion tonight. We missed you, dude. Dude, he had to downplay those sorts of things because he knew as soon as he said, hey, I have a new solo record and Mike Portnoy is the drummer, the whole world is going to go, see you back at Dream Theater? I mean, like, he absolutely knew. Ricardo, no problem on the shout out, dude. Again, thanks for checking out the show, bro. He knew that was coming, so he couldn't just be all over the top and vociferous, because then he also knew everybody would read into it and go, oh, he's Portnoy's back, and remember, like, how many times he was extremely adamant about the fact, look, Mike is not back. He's not coming back to Dream Theater. Mike Mangini is the drummer. He poured cold water on it every chance he got.
Mm-hmm.
And we know now that the reunion might have been more in the works than they let on, which might be why he was so over the top. Like, no, it's not happening. Like, when somebody just denies something a little too vociferously, that means it's happening.
Non-denial, or what do they call it?
Exactly. So, yeah, I mean, Chastity. Yeah, I mean, she says it. She says Portnoy and his family sort of slipped a tiny bit about him coming back before the official announcement, and I mentioned that before. Yeah, as she says, yep. Doug says, I think Portnoy was in my band for half a second during the 13 years. Yeah, dude, he played with everything, didn't he? It was, but that's what he wanted to do. But I think this was, looking back, I think it's easy to see that this is definitely the catalyst for the return. Again, that's not saying anything we all, weren't thinking at the time, and it has now, since been confirmed. But it's just interesting in hindsight to listen to the record and know what came after.
I hope we get a and I'm sure at some point we will. But I would love to get a third album and Portnoy on it, and I would love to see that live again. That would be great to see.
Oh yeah,
see that one more time live. I think would be awesome.
100%, dude. I completely agree. So, all right, man. Well, on that note, let's jump out of here. Great to see you again. Great to get back in the swing of things. We weren't very ham-fisted tonight. Show kind of flew by, lickety split. And I think I'm gonna go watch a few episodes of Beverly Hills 90210 here. So, oh my God, we are so stupid. Yeah, but we'll be right back here in 2 weeks. The date will be Thursday, July 24th, and I will be going camping the night after, and I will be going to Pantera the night before.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've got got some pretty nice tickets for me and my stepson. So we're having kind of like a dude's night. We're gonna get drunk and watch Pantera absolutely destroy.
How many times have you seen this now? Is this 2?
This is the second one, because we saw the very first show of the Return in America. Nice. And so this will be the second. Dude, you know what I almost wanted to do? And by the way, you know what? I have one more thing I wanted to talk about. I'm sorry. But yeah, I almost wanted to buy tickets to the Metallica tour, because it was Wolfgang Van Halen opening and then Pantera and then Metallica. I was like, I would have just seen Wolfgang and Pantera and taken off from Metallica. So, oh my God. But real quick, did you see any of the final Black Sabbath concert?
No, I plan on going on YouTube, I guess, to see some of it. I don't know. It just felt like such a Sharon Osbourne money grabbed kind of a thing. I don't know.
Well, it worked on me because I paid for it and I watched it.
Did you enjoy it at least?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Okay.
Admittedly, last week I was drinking pretty good. I had
you?
Yeah, dude, I've been drinking like almost none for the last like 2 months, but that was not the case. Like starting last.
I was gonna say that's normally not the case with you that I know, but go ahead.
No, but Doug says it was. He says yes, it was fantastic. Parts were fantastic, Doug. I think he says it's sad but fantastic. Yeah, I think we need to say some parts were good, some parts were not. But it was pretty emotional. It was hilarious seeing Jason Momoa jumping in the mosh pit for Pantera. That was really cool.
God.
Nuno Betancourt stole the show.
So what did he play on?
Oh God, dude, he was supposed to do I think like 3 songs, and he ended up doing 12.
No, that sounds you'll never get him off the stage.
Well, no, but it was like because a couple a couple other guys couldn't do their stuff.
Oh, okay.
So he basically learned all this all this stuff like in like a very short period of time, and sounded great. But yeah, I mean the Axl Rose stuff. If you look up Axl, it was God, I don't know what he was hearing in his ears, but he got way off the tempo.
That's what I heard.
Welcome to the Jungle, so that wasn't good. Dude, honestly, Sammy Hagar did a great job on Flying High Again.
Nice. That sounds cool.
Yeah, everyone's talking about, I don't know who the hell this guy is, but that Youngblood guy, and they're, he did so great. I didn't care for it, but and there you could hear that some of the guys are off a little, so there must have been like in-ear issues and things like that. But dude, for the most part, like Lizzie Hale sounded great doing the 2 songs she did. Ozzy, I mean, he sat the whole time. He can't barely walk anymore, but he actually sounded fine. I mean, he was, they're tuned to Q, obviously, but, dude, it was cool, and it was emotional. It was pretty crazy, because you kind of get that nostalgia feeling, and you're like, God damn, this guy really has done it all, man. He really is like, yeah, I do, and yeah, there we go. Doug said it. He says lots of nostalgia for the old guys like us, man.
So Jakey Lee? He wasn't able to play, right, because of his
he did play
injury. He still was able to play.
Yeah, he did. It was that's who was playing guitar with Lizzie Hale, but he did Ultimate Sin and Shot in the Dark.
Okay,
so it was. I think it was pretty much like he kind of hinted that everyone wanted Bark at the Moon, but he can't really play it right anymore.
Yeah.
Like you said, because he got shot and all that stuff. But
right.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it was crazy, like to see Sabbath and and it's just seeing Ozzy one last night, like, and it just I mean, if you just watch the Sabbath part,
yeah,
I mean, it's really emotional when you really think about it, dude. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I teared up a little. You're like, God, this really is history. It's like these guys started it all. You know, my favorite genre of music is metal, and it's like it all started with these guys. So, yeah, I would highly recommend it. I'll mention something too when we jump off air about it. But yeah, like check out the YouTube videos. Dude, highly recommend. So, and if you guys haven't seen it, definitely check it out. There's a lot of great stuff there. So, awesome. All right. Well, on that note, dude, again, we will jump out of here. We'll be back here on Thursday, July 24th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll be talking some more music on Ham-Fisted, the music podcast. We rebranded tonight, as you all know. So, but yep, don't know what we're talking about yet, but we will figure it out. And we'll see all you guys as usual. And thanks to everybody in the chat. Doug McCauley, Circle J, just saw you commented. Great to see you, man. Ricardo Lopez, obviously Chastity Crawley. Brian Ader, whoever the hell that guy is, can fuck himself. Kale McLeish, Mount Hood 91. So, yeah, great to see all you guys. Joseph Wren, great to see you. And we'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Till then, I'm your host, John. He is Brian. And as always, guys, Carpe Diem.